Howard University, site of Alpha's first General Convention many decades before, proudly hosted the World Policy Council members at their initial meeting after the group's formation.
Well, several years ago, the organization founded the World Policy Council here at the university. The first meeting, organizational meeting, was held here at Howard, and Senator Brooke and President Ponder and a number of others, Ambassador Horace Dawson, and many others were part of that founding. And I think it's a natural outgrowth, and it's a very mature and sophisticated response to global and world issues that really affect us all, and it's a recognition of that.
We work with men in that policy board. We talk, we think, it's like a think tank, and then we try to project what we think ought to happen, how we think the values that are consistent with the values of Alpha, and consistent with the values of an international leader like Martin Luther King Jr., who of course was an Alpha. To me, that is one of the cutting-edge ventures for Alpha, that we learn how to use the global platform to talk about local issues as well.
Our job, I think, is to do reflection, dialogue, research, and to reflect on major social and political issues, as well as religious matters.
After considerable discussion and reflection, we draw up and issue papers, position papers, on these matters, with the hope that our positions would affect and influence public policy. And we issue these position papers to the media of the country, to the opinion makers, but mainly, and also rather, not just mainly, but also to our fraternities, so that the chapters throughout the nation could accept these documents, read them, consider them, and make them a part of their onward discussion.
The President of the United States is getting this. When the President is making some big statement, a letter comes from this group, from this fraternity, saying how we think the President ought to react to this.
Since its founding, the World Policy Council has offered positions on the AIDS crisis, the problem of world hunger, the war on terror, among many other areas of foreign and domestic policy. The World Policy Council ensures that Alpha Phi Alpha's concerns and ideas are heard by those whose decisions shape the future. This group is a further step in Alpha Phi Alpha's long tradition of education and advocacy, and embodies the values of good citizenship and participation in public discourse. This active engagement in the political process is a natural extension of the fraternity's history of leadership. "100 years after its inception, the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity remains driven by the ideals of its founders at Cornell University in 1906. Individual attainment of education and scholastic achievement. This greater personal success makes possible service to others, striving for improvement of conditions for those less fortunate."
Well, I think Alpha will continue to play a major role because it still stands by those precepts that I told you about earlier. Scholarship, leadership, service to others. They'll never go out of style.
I think partly it is in the individual to realize that there is a greater society out there, and that those of us who are blessed have to give something back. But it is also something that is ingrained within the fraternity.
Cast your net out there as far as you can go. Try to make fishermen of men. Try not to give a man a fish, but give him a pole so he can learn how to fish, so he can make his own community better.
Man, if I don't do it, who else will? You know, all we have are each other. So if there's someone to move a community or move some kids in a more positive direction, we're it.
The practical application of this philosophy is the many social programs implemented by the fraternity. The roots of such an approach for addressing societal problems date back to the 1920s and 1930s with the implementation of the Go to High School, Go to College initiative and the Voteless People is a Hopeless People campaign. Today, both programs flourish and have further expanded to address additional academic, personal, social, and leadership needs of young African American males.
Our mentoring program involves a local high school where we take 7 young men and we work very intimately with them in relation to their academic success, their social success, improving their leadership abilities.
We have some brothers, including myself, who actually have a little brother. It's a one-on-one relationship concept. Then we have a program that we bring little brothers over to the fraternity building, and we work with them as a chapter.
Project Alpha was begun in the late 1970s in the Chicago area by Alpha Brothers of Iota Delta Lambda chapter. In 1982, the March of Dimes Birth Defects Foundation joined forces with Alpha, making the program national and taking important lessons to thousands of teens in hundreds of communities across the country.
Project Alpha was an attempt by our chapters to take young boys 10 to 14 years old and help them to understand what it means to be a man, medically, legally, morally, and spiritually. We don't have a formal puberty rite in this country, but our fraternity has attempted to provide it for young African American males.
Alpha Phi Alpha and the Boy Scouts of America share common goals and objectives regarding the proper development of young men. In order to help Scouting reach its full potential, Alpha chapters and brothers charter Scout units and serve as Scouting leaders on both the local and national level. Through the Boy Scouts, Alpha men become good neighbors while educating young men to become good citizens and leaders. At the 1990 General Convention, Alpha formally agreed to work with the Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America to promote a positive experience for African American youth and their families. By providing role models and increasing minority participation in local Big Brother and Big Sister activities, Alpha Brothers add a valuable dimension to an already successful campaign. In the early 1980s, Alpha expanded its leadership training to correct the economic, social, and political injustices faced by African Americans. The Leadership Development Institutes, started by the southern region of Alpha Phi Alpha, addressed this need. The initiative achieved great success and was incorporated into the regular activities of other regions of the Alpha community. To facilitate uniform control, Alpha nationalized the Leadership Development Institutes, setting common standards and common goals. The program encourages young people to attend college and to develop oratorical ability and strong moral compass. Teaching parliamentary procedure, organizational, and communication skills builds confidence to succeed in the future. Alpha Phi Alpha's collaborative effort with the nation's Head Start program assists fathers in elevating their self-esteem by teaching self-sufficiency as a way to counter negative social influences. In 1998, the fraternity formally merged these programs under the Alpha Phi Alpha Education Foundation. Through the foundation, Alpha facilitates programs consistent with the ideals originally determined by its founders in 1906. College brothers play a major role in the workings of the fraternity. Those elected as assistant regional vice presidents serve as voting members of the board of directors. College brothers compete in a National Scholar Bowl and vie for distinction as College Brother of the Year. They demonstrate their impressive public speaking skills in the Belford v. Lawson oratorical competition.
And has sent our armed forces to Iraq in hopes of disarming Saddam Hussein. I am the product of feet that pounded pavement for equality, the voices that echo necessity by any means.
I've always thought of Alpha as a boot camp for leadership. Alpha is in the business of producing leaders nationally and internationally. When you look at our history, whether it's Thurgood Marshall, Adam Clayton Powell, the list is long, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the men who have contributed greatly to this country and internationally alphas, I think it was because of the training and the experience that they enjoyed as being part of this fraternity is what has enabled them to be significant contributors in their respective endeavors.
No question. I mean, this whole notion of leadership is something that can't be overlooked because I think the fraternity helped to train me to become a leader, and that's very important. And certainly, my job as mayor, my job as president of the National Conference of Black Mayors means that I'm put in a leadership position that I must perform in.
Hence, that has been our image, that we have been closely associated with the elite of black education.
If it's going to be great, the number has to be greater than 1. And so what we're doing at Alpha is learning how to marshal that intellectual and human capital and make sure that we always collectively impact on whatever we're trying to do, because one at a time it won't happen. It's got to be a collective impact.
It's just innate in us to want to lead. I don't care who you are. That's the way Alpha Alpha prepares you. And that's what the Jews saw, that we send you out to lead.
Men of Alpha are among the accomplished leaders of every area of professional life in America.
We are facing some serious challenges right now. And I think that Alpha is going to be right there in the thick of all these challenges that we face, providing leadership, providing direction, helping to prepare others, and saying that based upon our history and tradition, we have no choice except to keep moving forward, to keep finding answers, to keep producing the Ralph Bunches and the Martin Luther Kings, to keep making men who can match the mountains of today.
There's so many things out there that we haven't even begun to touch on. And the fraternity is really just, right now, it's just primed to really leap forward and be the leader that it's been the past 100 years.
Alpha demands that you build a legacy. That's what it demands. Okay, this has been established, but that's the past. It's already been laid. That foundation has been laid. Now we're talking about building the first floor and the second floor and the third floor. And it demands that you understand that your legacy is now.
We represent a legacy of leadership. And that leadership is so ingrained in whom we are. And it's just kind of expected, we're expected to be at the head of the line.
That's what I love about Alpha, that it's not only we have this rich history, but we continue to progress and move forward, take forward steps.
Not only are they just our college brothers and members of this fraternity, they are also our mentees. We try to mentor them. That's another dimension of this being in this fraternity.
Alpha became sort of like the school for me. The school for the better making of men is what we often say. And it was a school. It's something that taught me how to become a better man, taught me how to grow up and become an adult.
It's even more worth it when you look at a young brother who's a college brother who may have come from a rough kind of an individual to being a very fine, refined, and defined young man, now looking in leadership.
As the 20th century drew to a close, the Brothers of Alpha embarked on their most ambitious project to date, building a memorial dedicated to the life and works of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. The idea for the memorial was born when Alpha man George Seeley impressed upon brothers Al Bailey, Oscar Little, and Eddie Madison the vital need to preserve and promote the legacy of Dr. King. The national organization adopted the idea, and the political wheels of Alpha turned when legislation was passed authorizing the fraternity to raise funds and build the memorial on the National Mall. General President-elect of Alpha Phi Alpha, Adrian Wallace, realized the enormity of the undertaking.
I knew at that point, coming into office effective in 1997, that my priorities had to shift accordingly, because this was a project of magnitude and scale and scope that fraternity heretofore had never really taken on before. So clearly this was something we had to devote a considerable amount of energy and resource and leadership to craft this mammoth, truly a mammoth and historic undertaking.
The ultimate goal